The Sam Sorbo Show is brought to you in partnership by the Herzog Foundation.
Hey there and welcome. My guest is a constitutional attorney and the father of 12. He's leading the charge to defend parental rights and the biblical family, from fighting government overreach to equipping Christian parents for battle. He's protecting the home as ground zero in the fight for our future. That's on today's Sam Sorbo Show. Here we go.
Sam Sorbo,
Sam, welcome back to the program.
I'm glad we welcome Sam Sorbo.
It's great to have you here.
Okay, welcome to the Sam Sorbo Show. So joining me today is Bradley Pierce. He's the co-founding attorney of Heritage Defense, where he leads the charge in defending the parental rights of Christian homeschooling families across the nation. And I don't know if you've noticed, but they have recently been quite under attack. There are threats coming from all directions, particularly the legislatures of the various states, and also social services, and of course, just plain old government overreach. So he himself is a product of homeschooling himself back in the late 80s, and he went on to earn his Juris Doctorate from Baylor Law School. He and his wife, Cindy, are raising and homeschooling their 12 children, modeling the very values that they fight to protect. So I'm welcoming now Bradley Pierce. Welcome.
Hey, thanks. Great to be with you.
Well, I was really excited to talk to you. I myself have started an initiative to protect us from government overreach, because what I see happening right now is the takeover of the private institutions and the homeschooling. Is that what you're seeing?
I mean, we're seeing a lot of attacks coming against parental rights from a lot of different directions, and so and it's it's, a lot of that's not really new. It's been going on for a long time, but that's why we started Heritage Defense now 15 years ago to just get in the battle and defend, like you said, one of the fundamental bedrocks of society, which is our family and our children.
So it's been 15 years. Have you noticed a shift in I don't know, the game plan or the tactics or anything?
Not like we would like to see. We've seen a lot of what we do is defending families against false or overblown accusations of child abuse, and we've seen some states go a good direction and other states go a bad direction. So I don't know that we've really seen a lot of progress around the country as far as reforming those things and improving those laws. I wish I had better news to report, but that's where things are.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose our rights have always been somewhat under attack. But I guess what I'm getting at is, we now have the metrics. The United States ranks 40th, and that's thanks to our public schools, 40th in a list of 40 nations worldwide. The homeschool community scores as much as 25 percentage points higher on standardized testing nationally. The minority homeschool community scores even better than that, typically between 25 and 42% higher on academic tests that are standardized. And so to my mind, what we are seeing is the and forgive me, the third sort of leg of this stool is this idea that COVID allowed parents to see what was going on in the schools. And a lot of what was going on in the schools was simply not, quote, education, was not academics. There was a bunch of other stuff. And so parents got upset and started speaking out at school boards. And so I think that we had kind of the perfect storm in a sense. I think we are just sort of getting through that. And so maybe I'm projecting my fear onto this. Not real fear, but the idea that homeschoolers pose a significant threat to the status quo government-run school system because we put the lie to their, what's the phrase? We put the lie to their claim.
Right.
Their claim is we educate and children need school and learning is hard. Like, they have a ton of claims.
Right.
And we simply put the lie to it. You don't need a degree, because particularly in the inner city, and the children doing so much better against their peers. And the research has shown that the the education level of the parents has zero to do with the academic prowess of the student, right?
Right.
So I've talked too much. Why don't you speak to all of that?
No, I mean, I think everything that you're saying is true, and we've seen. I mean, just kind of your last point there. My own mom was a high school dropout, and I think she did a great job, and I'm very very grateful to her. And I definitely it hasn't held me back at all. If anything, it's made I've been way ahead, and so I'm super grateful for homeschooling. And homeschooling has just got even more advanced and developed. Since then, there's way more curriculum, way more support groups, way more helps out there for parents than there were. I graduated high school in the year 2000, and so there's a whole lot more now 25 years later than there was even then. And we have seen some advances, on the homeschooling front. We've certainly seen the numbers explode during and even after COVID. A lot of people figuring out, wait, like, hey, I can do this. This doesn't, like you're saying, there's lots of lies out there that,
Yeah.
trust the experts. Only the experts know how to educate children.
Well, I think a lot of people said, well, I can do better than what they're doing. Like
Yes,
I can do better than
exactly.
that child abuse that's happening. And
Right,
so it was rock bottom. They didn't have very much to aspire to. Just
right.
don't hurt your kids with all that crap that they're giving kids in school. But go
Exactly.
ahead.
Yeah. Well, and that's with people also, they found out like all this stuff that, is being trash is being fed to the kids. And it's like, yeah, let's just stop that. And so that's been great. And then also, even on the kind of general parental rights front, one thing that has been helpful is the vaccine mandates has become more of an issue because of COVID and the government trying to cram those down everybody's throats. We were fighting vaccine mandates from the very beginning, but now it's become a lot easier because a lot more people have woken up to, wait a second, what is in these things and why? If it's so great, why are we have to be forced to do them? And so that's been really great, to defend parents' rights on that front. That has certainly been a lot of progress has been made on that.
Where are you personally located?
We're based in Texas, but we're a national organization.
Right. And what's happening in California because they have a full schedule that's required to vaccinate your child for school, right?
Right, they do. They do have a carve out just for homeschoolers in California. But yeah, if you're not a homeschooler or you don't have a medical exemption, which is extremely difficult to get in
Right.
California, if you don't have one of those things, then yeah, you've got to vaccinate there.
Yeah. It's really remarkable that the government feels that it has the right to do that. Am I wrong?
I mean, when did we give that authority to the government? I know we've kind of assumed that it has that
Let me check
authority
the
for a long
paperwork.
time, but yeah, yeah. I guess,
Nope,
yeah, when you
it's
fill out
not
your
in
birth
there.
certificate, by the way, this gives us authority to dictate what, injecting things into your child.
It's crazy. So
Yeah.
why did you start Heritage Defense? Like what was the moving factor?
Just, we love Christian families, we love homeschooling families, and we wanted to see, there's an organization, HSLDA, Homeschool Legal Defense Association, does a great job of defending parents' right to homeschool, and I encourage everybody to be part of that. But then we saw like a lot of other parental rights were coming under attack. That wasn't homeschooling per se, but there was a real need for families to be defended in all these other areas, right? Like medical freedom or child discipline, or even just kind of false allegations and things like that. Oh, and so we started this organization to really address that, and we saw that the cases that we were handling. I started practicing in 2007 with our president here, Don Hart, and we saw CPS cases that we were handling. If we could get involved very, very early, we could normally get them resolved, fairly quickly. But a lot of times, families were do-it-yourselfers and very frugal, as am I on both of those fronts, and so a lot of times they were trying to handle these cases themselves. They get out of hand, and then it was, as we say in Texas, it's hard to put the horse back in the barn.
Uh,
And so we started this organization to give someone that families can call 24/7 and reach experienced attorneys who've handled these things. And by the grace of God, we've had a lot of success.
so you're a nonprofit. How do you do your fundraising?
It's a member-based organization, so families join for $19 a month or 190 a year, and so families just kind of, most families won't need it in a given year, so that means that everybody's membership is helping to defend those families who do need it.
Right. Uh, are you familiar with the case of the family of 5? They were trying to avoid the baby getting a vaccine,
I've
and
heard
they
about the
fled to
case.
Texas?
I've read a little bit about it. I'm not sure of the actual facts on it. I'm one of those people that like to, know what's really going on before I comment on something in the
Sure.
news. But so I'm not exactly clear what's happening. That it seems like there's more to the story, but at least on its face, it sounds like a pretty bad situation.
Yeah, I mean, from what I read, and of course this is from media, so who knows, but the doctor turned them in because the doctor wanted to vaccinate the child. And so they fled to Texas, and Texas apparently turned them back over and is extraditing them back to Maryland. So,
Right.
it'll be interesting to see where that goes, and that might be a case for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
we've certainly had cases that have arisen. I mean, actually, the issue of vaccines comes up in tons of cases,
yeah,
even if it's not one of the allegations. But CPS often asks families, "Oh, by the way, do you vaccinate?" And if they don't like your answer, then they'll use that against you, for the
right.
rest of the case. And so it comes up all the time.
And that's probably part of the, when somebody gets into a sticky situation like like CPS bringing charges, the cases that you deal with, right?
Right.
And they think that they can sort of navigate out of it. Just answer her questions. It'll be fine. Just let them in the house. They can have a look around. There's nothing really bad here.
Right.
But then because they've been through this so many times, they know what to look for. They know what to ask. They know how to ask it. And if you're just sort of an innocent bystander who gets swept into this, isn't it sort of likely that you are going to trip yourself up somehow? Isn't that how it works?
It's like a criminal situation. When you get arrested, they say anything you say can and will be used against you, and it's the same thing here. That when you let them in, when you start talking to them, anything you say can and will be used against you, and so things can very quickly spiral if things are misunderstood or perhaps purposely, misconstrued. And then you also have, even if things go well, you now have had your home intrusion into your home by this government agent. Your children have experienced that. Their children, they almost always want to interview the parents, come in the home and then interview each of the children privately outside the presence of the parents, and that's very traumatic for children. And then they want to ask them what I call a fishing expedition, what they call a
Right.
global interview, which is, not just what are the allegations, but also like, do you feel safe at home? Do your parents ever fight or yell at each other? How
Where
are
do
you
they keep their
disciplined?
weapons?
Yeah, where are there weapons in the home? Do you know where people are supposed to touch you and not touch you, and all this stuff that maybe a lot of times children haven't even been exposed to these things, and it can be a very defiling or at the very least traumatic situation for children.
Yeah, it's and unfortunately once you're in that situation, if you refuse to anything, you look suspicious.
Exactly.
Even if you're just refusing on the grounds of, well, I typically don't allow my 3-year-old alone in the room with another adult, ever. Like, but
Exactly.
somehow that makes you look like the suspicious one, and it's really kind of,
Yeah.
I've noticed, I feel like I've noticed that CPS has more power these days somehow, and maybe it's just that I've gotten more attuned to it and I'm following stories more closely. But in the state of Illinois, I'm sure you're aware of HB 2728.
You have to remind me.
Sure. No harm, no foul. They are trying to pass a law that requires certain minimum education level for parents who wish to homeschool. So
Right.
you have to have, I believe it's a college degree in order to homeschool. You have to qualify to homeschool.
Right.
Whereas in the state of New Jersey, you no longer need to pass any kind of qualifying exam to become a teacher. So can you
Right.
square
Yes.
this round peg for me?
I think that tells us exactly what's going on, is that this is not about educating children. This is about control. That's exactly what's going on there. They just want to be able to control what your children, what's being told to your children and how they're being indoctrinated.
Right. So let me ask you this. Does heritage defense, it sounds like you defend people or help defend them when things have already gone awry. Are you involved in the legislation at all?
A little bit. That's something that we'd like to get more involved in, but we're not. We're not on the front lines of that. Certainly not on homeschool freedoms. HSLDA is certainly the leader on that. But we do get involved, where we can.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but back in, was it the late 90s? No, early 2000s, they outlawed homeschooling in the state of California. That
Okay.
did not go well
Yeah.
for them.
Right. Well, and I think that's one reason why, when they tried to do this vaccine, when they did the mandatory vaccines here a few years ago, is before COVID, they took away the exemptions. They made a special carve out just for homeschoolers because they know that the homeschool lobby is very strong, and I hope it stays that way.
And I mean, so I did a little mini cheer because to me, that's impetus enough for other families to begin the homeschool journey, which of course is what I desire for every family.
Yeah.
So I have a little cheer, but I have a feeling that somehow it then makes us more of a target in the state of California as well. And so I'm not convinced, that my little cheer was warranted. On the one side, maybe, on the other side, maybe not. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to ask you a little bit about your homeschool journey, your education. But I also want to know about how you are raising your children in this environment. So maybe we can shed some light for families who are either just embarking on their journey or maybe they're well into it, but you have a lot of experience in this area, and so I want to get into some of that with you. So
Sounds
just
great.
stay tuned, everybody. We will be right back. This is the Sam Sorbo Show. Thanks for tuning into the Sam Sorbo Show. We are in a battle for our very nation, a nation that was founded on Christian principles and on the Bible. The Ten Commandments is the basis for our rule of law. But these days, when you go talk to people on the street, you'll find that most of them don't even know what rule of law means. And that's why I'm so proud to have Herzog Foundation as a sponsor of my show. I also love what they do because they seek for the benefit of Christian education throughout the nation. So Herzog Foundation is a wonderful partner for us here at the Sam Sorbo Show. Thanks for watching. Discover the wonders of biblical history with Biblical Excavations by David Nekrutman. Teach teens to love the Bible, defend their faith, and know God more deeply with a unique collection of educational resources that bring the ancient world of the Bible to life. Visit biblicalexcavations.com/curriculum and use code SAM to get 10% off your next purchase. Dive into God's Word and enrich your homeschooling journey today. All right, so welcome back. My guest is Bradley Pierce. He is the co-founding attorney of Heritage Defense, which occupies itself with helping families defend against infringements of their rights, let's say, by the authorities. And we have a big problem with authority now, especially homeschoolers, right? Homeschoolers have a problem with authority.
We're very, we're have a natural, healthy skepticism of government authority.
Right? Because we didn't grow up in a box. We
Right.
weren't institutionalized. Well, I shouldn't say we. I was. So I shouldn't have a problem with authority, but I do, because I'm one of those outliers that the system didn't work on me. You grew up as a homeschooler. Your mother homeschooled you. She did not graduate high school, is what you said?
That's right. She later got her GED, but yeah, she did not finish high school.
And so was she very academic with you or less academic, or how would you say your homeschool, for you personally, your homeschool journey worked to to encourage you to go to law school?
Yeah, I would say it was very. I mean, again, this is why homeschooling works better than anything else, even in situations like that, because no one loved me more than my mom and my dad, and so my mom, she was learning right alongside us for a lot of it, and
How many children?
I just had one brother, and he was 15 months, or he is 15 months older than me, and so there's just the two of us, and she was you know, at that time there was some homeschool conferences and book fairs and things like that, but there was a very limited curriculum selection. But we would, she'd buy lots of curriculum, but then over time we'd, whittle it down, and then the next year buy a bunch more, and then whittle it down, and so over time we tried tons of different things and just found kind of an eclectic, arrangement that we liked, and then when I was 12 years old, she said, "Well, I want to get y'all some foreign language, and I want you to learn Spanish." And so she even at 12 years old, she took us to the local junior college and tried to enroll us there to take a Spanish class, and and they said, "Well, you got to take this test, and you've got," and my brother and I both passed. And then they said, "Well, man, we can't have just 12-year-old and at that time 14-year-old in the class, so you've got to take the class with them." So my mom and my brother and I took Spanish college Spanish together, and it counted toward my college degree whenever I eventually got up there. But so she was just very hands on with us. And then when I was 12 years old, she said, "All right, you've got to do math, you've got to do English because those are on the SAT, and you're going to take that, and you're going to go to college because nobody else in our family had gone to college. We were going to be first generation." And she said, "You got to do those things, but other than that, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I want to just do history. I just want to read history." And so she's like, "Well, go pick out a bunch of history books." And then she approved them. And so from that point on till I graduated, I did math and did English, and then just read a lot of history. And then when I was 16, then I started taking dual credit, college classes at the local junior college.
What possessed her? If her goal was to get you to college, what possessed her not to just send you to public school?
That's we've started off the first couple of years. I was in a private school, a Christian private school, and but even there, she saw, or both my parents saw, really the material was good. It was Christian, but even with good material, there's a lot of peer influence there, in those schools, and they saw that they were not really helpful for my brother and I, and so that's whenever they pulled us out. I think that was the primary impetus, was just to separate from negative peer influences that they saw even at a very young age. And I'm very grateful for them. I mean, certainly at the time it's like, hey, I want to play with my friends, but they did remove us. And of course I still, we still went to church, and we're in this homeschool support group and
Sure.
had neighbors and big extended family. Still got plenty of socialization, but just not the 8 hours a day with my peers. And
So
so it was really good.
I'd like to I'd like to highlight the difference in the education that you ended up receiving. What grade were you when you were taken out of your little Christian school?
So the first year of homeschooling was second grade.
Okay, so your brother had gone through 3 grades,
Right. That's right.
and so they saw that. So I had a very similar experience with my son. We moved for the lovely little, public school, but I didn't like the attitude that, and it wasn't really bad, it was just not good. It was just some of the attitude, some of the stuff that was coming home, and the lack of academics. And while maybe the little Christian school gave you some solid academics, of course, really, what are you expecting with 3rd and 1st grade? But your mother took you out, and so from then on, do you remember, did she sit with you the whole day to educate you? She probably couldn't have. I mean, she didn't know
No.
that much, right? So what did it
Right.
look like?
I mean, she knew. I don't want to say she wasn't or isn't
I
a
was
highly
joking. I
intelligent woman,
seriously,
but yeah,
I'm also
but
a high
that's what
school
people say, like,
dropout. I
"Oh,
was
you must be an
joking.
idiot." Right, exactly, if you didn't go to college. But no, there was some stuff that we'd sit together and do, but, most of it, if you can read, there's a lot of the books have instructions about how to do them, and, if there's any question about it, yeah, then I'd go ask her, but other than that, most of it we just kinda did on our own.
Right. And so she was supervising and she was helping where
Right,
it was necessary because you were still really young, but
right,
you had a lot more freedom. And I think that to me, that's the key is the freedom to learn is the
right.
key to the enjoyment of learning and the will to learn, the desire to learn.
Right. She always said that she's trying to teach us 2 things, you know, the knowledge was secondary. The primary thing she's trying to teach us, other than loving God, after that, it was to love learning and to learn how to learn, right? To learn how to learn and to love learning. And I
Yeah,
think
I'm
she
gonna clip
succeeded on
that
both
because
of
that's
those.
brilliant.
Yep.
That's what it's about, and that's what I'm trying to impart to homeschoolers today. So you have how did you get 12 children? Are there multiples?
That we do have 2 sets of twins. Yes, we do. I got 12 children because I have a wife who with me together, we love children, and God just chosen to give us 12. We've just said, "Hey, however many you wanna give us," and he's decided that that number is 12.
And the age ranges?
Okay, this is where it's really crazy. So, our oldest is about to be 14, and so that's where we have 2 sets of twins in there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we've got a lot of people very close together. So we have a very
How
busy
many kids
house.
how
Very
many
busy
kids do you have in diapers?
Let's see here. Right now, I think we have actually just two in diapers right now.
Oh,
But we
okay.
have number 12's on the way. So we need to try to maybe potty train one of those to keep the numbers low.
And does your 14-year-old boy or girl?
Girl, it's my daughter.
So is she into the babies? Is she helping out and stuff?
She is, yeah, she's a big help, and all the children are, they try all try to help at different levels, and yeah, they love the children, and they are all a big help.
I gotta come visit you because I wanna see this in
Yeah,
action.
come
But,
on.
so I need you to tell people because so many people are like, "But how can I homeschool 3 children at the same time?" Or and
Right,
I can answer that because I did it, right? But I
right,
can't answer for 12, and I would love for somebody who is going through now, not all of your kids are school age. What
right.
age do you start homeschooling? And define homeschooling for me so that we're clear. Like, when do
Yeah,
you start?
I always say homeschooling begins at conception. That's what I say, right?
Fair
You're
enough.
you're you're educating your children from the very, very beginning. Everything is homeschooling, right? It's just family discipleship, home
Thank you.
education, whatever do we want to call it. You're beginning that from day one, and so we don't really have a particular age where it starts. It's just, hey, do they look like they're ready to start their letters or their colors? Or right, then we start with that, and all right, now we're teaching them to read. So then once we're teaching them, once they know how to read, then that's whenever it becomes a little more, all right, they can do more things on their own. And then of course, we check, and my wife does most of this, right? Checks their work, and provides tutoring and answers their question. But then once they can read, they can do a lot of it on their own, and just needs more kind of like accountability and oversight, and just be there for questions, once they can read.
So, are you doing any kind of a co-op? Is there a curriculum that you absolutely adore? Any other sort of little tips that you want to offer people?
We're not doing a co-op. It'd be hard to do it with just the various,
I don't know how you
grades
get
and
out of the
pieces.
house with 12 kids.
Right. And so we're not doing a co-op, but we do, I would say we have kind of an eclectic, kind of like I was raised. We don't just have one curriculum. There is kind of one that we use up until maybe second or third grade, and then after that, then we kind of divide across a few different ones based upon the subject. So it just kind of depends, you know, what it is that we're doing and how old they are.
And, would you say that your kids help each other with the learning?
They do. It's I don't know that we've really instituted anything formal along those lines. They're not like assigned to tutor or anything like that, but there's a lot of it that just happens very organically, where they'll just ask each other questions, or once people learn something, they like to share it with others or show people how much they learn. So the bigger ones just naturally like teaching things to little children and reading to them and things like that, and so a lot of that happens organically.
Yeah, you probably have a very learning family, because once you start homeschooling, you slowly realize that everything is a teaching opportunity and everything becomes a learning opportunity, and then you start sort of showing your children that, and then they glom onto it because they want to learn,
Right.
and so they're looking for places to learn more or to ask questions, and so I'm sure with the number of you, I don't know how many are really active yet, but I'm figuring you've got at least 6 kids who are, like, actively learning, and they're going back and forth with each other, and they're sharing what they just learned, or they're, trying to figure out how to go about learning more or whatever.
Right.
It's gotta be chaotic, but also wonderful at the same time.
Right. Yeah, it kind of bounces between organized and chaos, and that's just the nature of homeschooling because that's just how
Does
life
everybody
is.
Sorry, does everybody have chores?
Yes, at least after a certain age, yes, and
Yeah.
we do have very clear, like, all right, these are your chores, these are responsibilities, and everybody has those.
So can you just tell me, we're gonna run out of time, but, like,
Yeah.
what's a typical day? You go off to the office?
Yeah, I do. I have an office not too far away, about 5 miles away, and so I go in a little bit later to the office. I try to be at home, for the first part of the morning. We eat breakfast together, read the Bible together, talk about that, and then maybe I'll do a little other reading with them, reading out loud and talking about something that we're reading together, and then I'll go off to the office and then come home for lunch, and we will have lunch together, and in between that, right while I'm gone at the office, that's the main time of the day to get kind of just morning chores done, and then they get the bulk, if not all, of their of the homeschooling, if you will, done in the mornings,
We
and
call it
then
academic work. They get their
yeah, there
academic
you
work
go,
done, right?
academic work. Some of that, there's various some people are procrastinate more than others, and so sometimes that bleeds over into the afternoon, and or there's bigger projects and things like that. But a lot of times they have it, most of it done by lunch. Then I'm home for lunch, get to spend time with them then, and then back to the office for the afternoon until dinner time.
And what does the rest of their day look like while you're gone?
Yeah, so it's again, it can be if they have larger projects or if they didn't get their work done, then they may be doing that in the afternoon. But there's a lot of free time as well in the afternoon for them to play outside, play with one another, inside, and also just a lot of it that they love reading, and so we're grateful for that. So there's a lot of that that's spent, sitting around reading or doing even other things that are just kind of more passively educational activities, just playing trivia games, or we have this device that's kind of like has different kind of trivia, science and history and things like that that they like playing on, and a lot of different things. Every day is a little bit different.
What is the what should be the number one priority, do you think, that a homeschool parent should focus on above everything else? Like, just whatever the first priority should be.
I mean, for every person, loving the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. I think that's number one. And it's even, one of the passages in the Bible that people use to support homeschooling is in Deuteronomy 6, and it's that passage that Jesus calls the greatest commandment. That's right before God, then says, "And you shall teach these things to your children as you walk, as you rise up, as you lie down." And so, anyways, first priority is always you know, who made me? Why should we worship him? How does he love us? We live to glorify him. That's number one. But then, number two is, loving our neighbor. And we even talk about, why do we learn? Why do we want knowledge? Why do we want skills? Why do we want these things? Which so that we can better serve God and our neighbor. And that's really what it's all about.
That's beautiful. Do you have any advice for the church? that how the church could maybe support homeschooling more? Because to my mind, school is in a certain way antithetical to God, especially in the lives of the children. And so it's very hard to make the case for me, or to me, I say, where the school doesn't form a separation between the child and the parent, which is against God's design. Does that make sense?
Right, right.
So how could the school come alongside families, do you think, and help with homeschooling? Any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I think the church needs to be speaking to this issue. It's an issue that every family faces. I think churches need to be preaching, theology and things like that. But then, okay, now how do we apply these things
Mhm.
that we're reading in scripture to our individual families on major decisions like this? And whenever we have so many Christians that are sending their children off to these government indoctrination centers that have
Yeah.
thrown God out, and are teaching children things that are, anti God and anti Scripture, we need to remove our children from there, and we need pastors leading the charge and telling that to people, and then telling them also, encouraging them that, hey, whatever God calls you to, He's going to equip you for, and God does call you to educate your children. You are the primary disciplers of your children, and He's going to equip you to do that. Just cry out to Him to help you and to give you wisdom. And like James says, if you ask God for wisdom, as long as you're not asking in a double-minded way, He will give it to you. And pastors need to be preaching that.
That's nice. I often tell parents, God wants you to homeschool and he knows you. He already factored in your stupidity.
Right.
All right. Last question. What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh wow. I'd say on the education front, I would say don't go into debt. That's some advice that I would give myself because I went into some debt for college and then a lot for law school, and there were some ways that I could have avoided that or minimized that, and that's something that I tell a lot of young people now is, hey, try to avoid that because it can limit your freedom once you graduate, and it can be a big burden on you and your new family, and so try to stay out of debt.
Love it. I want to thank you so much. This was really encouraging and uplifting. Do you want to say anything further about heritage defense to encourage people?
Yeah, if you're a homeschooling family, we encourage you to go check out our website, heritagedefense.org, and learn more about what we do. And even if you're not ready to join, we actually have a section of our website called our Law and Policy Vault, where we have the laws of all 50 states on dozens of issues affecting parental rights. And you can go access that for free and find out what are the laws in your state about parental rights, about like, car seats or children leaving children in the car, or children, home alone, or vaccine laws, or newborn laws, or all kind of other issues that pertain to parental rights. You can go check that out on our website.
How fabulous. That's a very useful tool. Bradley Pierce, thank you so much for coming on the program with me.
Thanks. It's been great.
All right, so that's going to do it for me. This is the Sam Sorbo Show. I hope you really enjoyed this. I did. And we'll see you next time. Remember, speak truth, speak it boldly.
The views and opinions expressed in the Sam Sorbo Show are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views and positions of the Herzog Foundation.